Hi there. Welcome to our series of What God Isn't before we get on to what we think God is. And I'm doing this one. I feel quite passionate about this because what I don't believe God is either irrelevant or boring. I think one of the problems today is where we interface with church, which isn't very often, is occasions that are quite ceremonial. We might see something on telly, maybe in Westminster Abbey, I live in the UK, or we might go to a wedding or a funeral, and often there's a liturgy involved and there's a set way of doing things, and there is a sense where sometimes the ceremony is really, really appropriate, but it does give the wrong impression. And some people just think that's all that church is. And it can be incredibly boring. And I have to say that though my father was a pastor and we lived in a situation with a church where they would have wanted to make it dynamic, a lot of the time I was quite simply bored. And some of that was because the same sort of routine happened time after time after time, Sunday after month after year. It was roughly the same thing. And so after a while it became familiar and it became boring. And I, quite frankly, really, when I was a teenager, I couldn't wait to get away. And that is often where people leave church. They can't wait to get away. So if you think church is boring, I have to say I don't blame you, because I don't think as Christians we've done a very, very good job of it. I would like to say though at this point that for some people the ritual of church is really, really important. I went through a time which I now call spiritual abuse, where things happened to me in the church which were really, really difficult. And so going to a little local communion with a few old ladies actually, to be sitting there, and just be able to take communion quietly in a very peaceful setting was very, very healing to me. So there are times when these things can feel appropriate, but they're not a very good advertisement for God and life and some of the things that make Christianity a wonderful thing to have. So it is a bit like looking at a brochure of New Zealand, a really boring bit of New Zealand in the 1880s. And that is the kind of a symbol of the sort of thing some people do in church. They look at the brochure, and it's not even a brochure about what is, it's a brochure offer about what was, and they find it really boring, and it doesn't mean much after a while. Now just imagine though, if you tore up the brochure and somebody came along one day and said, would you like to go to New Zealand? Now the first thing you might say is, well, it didn't look very nice. And it didn't look very relevant to modern life. And if that was your reaction when somebody asked you to go on a trip, then again you can't be blamed, because the brochure that you've been looking at is not only a boring bit, but it's an old-fashioned bit. And that is how a lot of the church is represented today, and it really breaks my heart. But just supposing that person is someone that you know, a friend, someone in your family, someone who really sits you down and says, look, New Zealand is absolutely wonderful. You went there, you'd love it. It's everybody's bucket list. You've got to experience it. You've got to see it. Now, that's evangelism. If you want to know what evangelism is somebody who's been to New Zealand, raved about it, knows that it's beautiful, comes back and tells everybody about it. But you have to have this conversation with people that really think they've seen the brochure of New Zealand. Now, actually, the wonderful news is if you can listen to the person, and somebody maybe somewhere has been telling you, if you like to use the analogy that New Zealand is actually amazing, then you can experience for yourself. Now, the next problem might be, well, I can't afford the trip. It's very expensive to get there, and I'd love to go there, but I can't. So the friend says, well, that's okay, because I've got a friend who loves taking people to New Zealand who will actually pay the price for you to get there. And that's the cross, that's Calvary. So you get to the point where you think, okay, well, if somebody else will pay for it, and you, who I'm beginning to trust and I really like you, says it's beautiful, let's go. And so you actually go and you experience New Zealand for yourself, and it is beautiful. It is your bucket list. Everybody's one of the places I want to go to is New Zealand. Now that is the journey that people travel on when they find out about real Christianity. They understand they've been looking at probably a brochure. They understand that the brochure is way, way out of date. They understand that it is just the brochure. It isn't the real thing. And then people will in some way introduce them to the concept that they can go to New Zealand themselves. And I hope you're following me with the analogy, because that is the real thing. That's what Christianity is. It's not looking at what it might be, it's experiencing what it is. So God is, I put it to you, neither boring or irrelevant. Hope you'll join me again soon. Bye-bye.